little editing before I came, and all the edits aren't on there. So anyway, I've got the latest autosave version, so it's missing a few things, but we'll point those out to you. Appreciate you being here. And how many of you expect to be involved or have already been involved in some type of assessment at your school? All right. How many of you expect to be involved in some type of, almost everybody, all right? Either you have been involved or you will be involved in some type of assessment at your school, whether you're proctoring a test, administering a test, running tests back and forth, working the hallways, keeping control in the hallways, giving test administrators bathroom breaks or whatnot. Everybody in the system pretty much is involved in testing at some point. It is, I'm not the most liked person around because of the job. I think I'm a likable person though, but so I've tried to separate these things, okay? It's not necessarily me, it's a job. Sometimes it is me. But I think mostly it's the job and what comes with it. Testing is not always it's not always a fun thing to talk about. It's certainly not a fun thing that you have to do. That's part of your day, part of your year, and there seems to be more and more of it. I was having a discussion with somebody recently, and it seems to happen more and more often, more frequently, about how many tests we give and how much of our time is devoted to testing. The reality is, state-mandated tests take up a small portion of our time. It's the preparation for the state-mandated tests that take up most of our time. This is the test. To test us for the test, we see if we are ready for the test. That's kind of where we are. We give a lot of benchmark tests and pre-benchmark tests and post and all this stuff in order to prepare adequately for the test. Unfortunately, that backfires sometimes because the students get bored with the test and think, it's just another test. They make it sloppy, and so when the actual test comes around, they may look at that, is this the real one or is this the whatever? They're confused as to what's going on. So want to encourage you to stress to your students the importance of doing their best at all times. That's one of the things I'll probably tell some stories on my kids more than I should in here, but I've got a little boy, he is 10, and I was just having this discussion with him last night. You need to do your best at all times. It doesn't matter. If how many people are going to see this, or if somebody said it doesn't really count or whatnot, do your best at all times. They're doing a living museum thing. So he's Andrew Jackson, and his teacher, he put on there that his nickname was Old Hickory. So the teacher made a comment and said, "How did he get his nickname? Write a couple sentences about how he got his nickname." So his solution was to just remove that from his name. And we had a discussion about that, all right? So, and it's ongoing, it's a continuous thing. So just want to encourage you to help your kids through this process. There are many things, and I'll make this PowerPoint available on the testing homepage. There is a testing homepage. Really, there's not much on there right now other than some links to the state Department of Education, where you can look up some other things, all kinds of things about testing. But I'll make this PowerPoint available there so you can look at it if you need to, and refer back if you're trying to take notes. I was at a training for the Park Field Test a couple weeks ago, and imagine this many words. I should do it this way. This many words amplified by 50 on the same slide. That's how many words were up on every slide. And they said at the very beginning, don't even bother trying to take notes, because there was just so much. So we'll allow you to go back and look at this. Talk to your students about the beforehand, and as you give give your test and pre-test. Let them know what's expected of them. Okay, here's what we're doing, here's why, all right? Look at short sessions and longer sessions, just vary things up a little bit, all right? As you test, so the kids don't get in a monotonous kind of routine, okay? So as you prepare students, do some pre-tests, do some review projects, review games, standard focus thing. I was having a discussion with the school board last night at a work session about the benchmark test that we give. How many of you gave the benchmark test? The ThinkLink test or Discovery Ed? And you know, our results sometimes are inflated on those ThinkLink tests. We've got X number of kids showing proficient or advanced, but when our actual TCAPs come in, the number of actual proficient or advanced is lower than that. I did an analysis of last year's ThinkLink, the 3 benchmarks we gave, or the 3 times we gave the benchmark, and I averaged it out, and it turned out that our TCAP scores were only 1 or 2 percentage points lower than the average of the 3 benchmarks. So it's closer than you think, although some of them may be a lot higher. When you average it out, it comes in pretty close, pretty tight. We're given the U.S. Common Core benchmark as opposed to the Tennessee standard benchmark, because even though it's the Common Core with the dropped SPIs out of the Tennessee standards, there's a good link to the 2 of them still, and they are high. All right, so just bear that in mind. What I shared with the board was the beautiful thing about the ThinkLink or the Discovery Ed benchmark is the availability of the SPI Pros. All right, so even those Common Core, U.S. Common Core questions have SPIs, Tennessee SPIs linked to them that you can go and look up and see, okay, this question refers back to this SPI. Did my student get it or not get it? All right, and so these are some things that you can do as you use these review tools and look at your standards. I encourage people, one of the best performers in the state, one of the best teacher performers in the state in terms of student growth, has a little bulletin board in his room, and it's just a poster-board size thing. It's got all the SPIs out across here, and it's got all the students' names there, and it's got a bunch of gold-foiled stars all over it. That's all there is to it. And the kids, as they know the SPIs, he gives them stars. And he has different colors, so the gold, they really know. They've answered a lot of those SPI questions, right? And so he keeps track, just real nice and simply, of what the students know. It's not tracking the test, because the SPIs, that's what the state has said. This is the curriculum that you're going to teach. These are the standards you're going to teach. Okay, so he's teaching the state standards. He's not teaching the test. The test is over those standards, okay? Just like any test that you make, okay? You know where you're going, okay? And you teach the standards involved for that test that you're going to give. The TCAP test works exactly the same way, okay? And we need to approach it that way. I'm not teaching the test. I'm teaching my class science, biology standards. And those things are going to be covered on the TCAP test, all right? Can I teach some other things? Yeah, as long as they go along with the standards and that. I don't need to spend a crazy amount of time on my pet project. I could teach all year on genetics, right, Ross? I love genetics. And but that's not going to help the kids overall on that. So you want to make sure that you're standard focused. All right? Do small group sessions. As you prepare your students, break your kids out into small groups as they're in work centers, working with kids one-on-one, so you know what they know. Do you know what your students know? Okay? Or what you think they know. So know that. Practice reading stamina. There's a lot of reading, okay, on the TCAP, especially the reading language arts. I've been on some bias reviews as the state or testing company. I need to stop wondering. He's trying to film this, and I'll just wonder. I'm going to come in and out of the frame a lot. All right. On the bias reviews, we spend 3 days just reading the passages and looking for potential bias in the passages. And some of those passages, I'm thinking, this is the 4th grade test? This passage is 2 pages long. Okay? So as you work with your students, work with them on reading and reading critically. All right? That's huge. If a student can read and read critically, it's proven that they're going to perform better on the test, any test. Okay? They have to understand what they're reading, and they've got to have the stamina and endurance to hang with it and do that. So do different types of reading, and then really press them on those things. Okay? Same thing with math. We tend to move away from math, word problems sometimes, and we need to get our kids to do more and more word problems and really hang with those things. Avoid the review burnout. So you can throw review in all kinds of different ways. But if you can do reviews without the kids even knowing you're doing reviews. All right, so think about that. How can I review my students without them knowing, oh, here's another review. We're going to go over, he's putting these questions up on the Promethean board from the TCAP practice, and we're doing this again. And over you're doing that. All right? So think about some different options, making games out of them or this and that. Where you, on little quiz cards and sharing them out with students so they're doing paired kinds of things. All right? So there's different ways to do the review other than throwing everything up on the Promethean board and then going down that way. All right? Okay. I'm going to fly through some of these things. You want to vary your answer delivery. Please do this as you make up tests, and you're going to have to practice the multiple choice questions. That's just my view of it. Right, the test is multiple choice. Next year's part test, there's a performance-based assessment with it, but then there's also the end of year test, and that's going to be some multiple choice. Okay? And some of those multiple choices in the future are going to be multiple choice. I had an anatomy and physiology class at Baylor, and man, it was a hard class. That was probably the hardest class I took, because our questions on the test, every question had 12 possible answers. Okay, and it wasn't just one of 12; it could be 4 or 5 of those things. All right, and you're sitting there and punching. Thinking through, and it wasn't like, oh, this is obvious and everything else is wrong. They could have all fit in there in some way, so you had to come up with the best response to the scenario given. It was a difficult class, all right? But it taught me to look at things a little differently as I take tests and look at answer choices. Your kids, if I were to say, go into your classroom or go into any classroom, and anywhere in the U.S. and ask them about answer choices, most of them would say, oh, pick C, that's most often going to be right. And, get out of that type of thing, because here's how standardized tests work. Every answer has an equal shot. Okay? So basically, if I've got a 100-question test, you're going to have 100 questions that are choice A. 25 questions that are choice A, 25B, 25C, 25D. Now, are there minor variations in there? Yes, but they're not going to be statistically different. Okay? So one answer is not going to show up statistically more than another answer. Okay? So as you create questions, create them where you vary the answer choices so that they're not all A, not all D, not all C, whatever you're thinking. And then have them answer in different ways. And like this thing depicts sign language, they can do that, do bubbling, whiteboard. Okay. This is just, you can go to Pinterest. I don't know anything about Pinterest other than my kids have it. My little girls have they're pinning stuff on there. I was like, oh, I pinned this on there. It's like, did you make that? No, I just pinned it. Who made it? I don't know. It's just, so somebody made this and put it out there somewhere, and somebody else found it on the web and pinned it to their board, whatever that is, okay? But if you go to TCAP test taking strategies, one of the very first things that comes up is some person's Pinterest board that's got tons of stuff on there.
Hey, but you know what? It's not allowed at school.
For 15 minutes. You can clear that for 15 minutes, all right, and then go and check out that strategy. I know, because I did that this afternoon, all right. So, Mr. Stookey, what are you on Pinterest for? TCAP. When you have testing conversations with your students, be calm, yet serious, all right? I've got this worded a different way later on in the slide, but express to your students in a calm way. The kids are going to mirror you. They're going to mirror the atmosphere of the school. Did anybody go to the, it was a Tennessee TEA thing that was at Liberty in the fall? It was on state testing and all this. Did anybody go to that? Well, since I'm the testing person, I figured I'm going to go see what they're talking about. So I went to it, and one of the things that was brought up by parents and teachers and that is these tests, they're evil because they're creating a bad atmosphere in our school. The school's nice and inviting in the fall, but when my student came back, my precious little girl came back to school in January, all of a sudden it turned into a doom dungeon. Okay? All the pretty things that were up on the wall were gone. It was dark. Things were covered up. That's not the test. That's our reaction to the test. And so this little girl, fourth grade girl, not in our system, had to go on homebound because she was so stressed out she couldn't go to school anymore. She didn't want to go to school. Now you think that's extreme. I'm also in charge of homebound for our system, and I can tell you, I get requests a lot, often. Last year more than this year, but a lot of requests for homebound because of anxiety. Anxiety in little kids. Okay, so if we can alleviate that in any way, we need to be doing that. All right, the things as simple as this, and this is one of the things that the mother brought out. My daughter's afraid to go to school because she just doesn't think she's going to be able to zap the TCAP. It's a cute little catchphrase, but a little fourth grader, I got to zap the TCAP. I don't know if I can zap the TCAP, and this girl's all worked up because she can't zap the TCAP. All right, so little things like that. Be calm as you talk about it, but also express them the seriousness of it, and that this is important. This is just for us to see, how much learning, and you've done a lot of learning this year. How much, and really to gauge how much learning you've done. And so you can show others how much learning you've done as well. But doing it in a calm yet serious manner. So you want to also explain the test implications to students. Obviously, bigger kids understand this more than smaller kids, but the TCAP does count as part of the student's grade. In high school, it's the final exam, 25% of their course grade. In elementary school, or 3rd through 8th, it counts for 15% of the student's second semester grade. So there's great implications that go along with this now. Listen to your students' concerns. If you can sense a difference in your students as you get closer to test time, as you're dealing with tests, talk to them. Make the chance to talk with them and see what's going on. All right, listen to the concerns, and then encourage them. But if there's things like I talked about, zap the TCAP. If there's little things like, man, you know what? I didn't really think about that, how that might affect a kid. Do that. Okay. Share past experiences of success. Okay, those are good things. All right. The Tennessee Department of Education website has some TCAP things in it. I had it pulled up earlier, but since my computer shut down, I'm not going to spend the time looking for it again. But it's on the Tennessee Department of Education homepage. Also, if you Google TCAP test-taking strategies, different things like the Pinterest thing pulls up. About the third one down is something from the Department of Education, and it's basically just a little pamphlet for students, parents, and educators. And there's different tips in there for those three groups, so you can pull that up and look at that. All right? All right. Really, we should encourage attendance all year long and timeliness all year long, and so continue to do that, especially as we get closer to testing. It's difficult to administer a test when a bunch of people are coming in late or absent and whatnot. All right, so here's some general strategies that you might share with your students. Okay, read and apologize. This is wordy. I should have pared it down some more, but they need to read all directions carefully. That seems like a simple thing. All right. Luke Stookey, my 10th grader. One of the things that makes me nuts about him is he is overconfident. So he does not read things carefully. Oh, I know it. And he starts reading, oh, I know it, and then he moves on to the next thing. He's a bright kid, we think. His scores don't always show that. Because he's so confident and overconfident, really. And so, oh, I know that, and he moves on. It's like, Luke, if you knew that, you'd get it right at some point, okay? So don't be careless. His teacher said he makes a lot of careless mistakes. So as you see students making careless mistakes on things, get them to slow down and think about what they're doing. Read the directions carefully, all right? Every possible answer choice, all right, read every possible answer choice. I don't necessarily agree with this, all right? But for student care, for the careless students, it's important that they should read every possible answer. All right, and analyze it. That way, the way the tests are set up, it's not like a lot of tests that teachers will make. I remember making some tests early on in my career, and I always had the correct answer, a decent answer, and then 2 answers that were just ridiculous. Not crazy ridiculous, but if you had a quarter of a brain in your skull, you would know that wasn't going to be the answer. Okay, so if I'm a careless student and I come across a fairly decent but wrong answer, I think, oh, that'll work, and don't read down and say, oh, here's a much better answer, and it's correct, then I'm going to miss that question. So have the students read the questions carefully. The tests have, you see the STEM, they're all set up the same way. A STEM, a correct answer, and 3 distractors. Okay, they're named distractors because they distract the student from an answer. Okay, in law terms, they're attractive nuisances. Okay, they are an attractive nuisance. They are not completely off. Right? If you thought about them long enough, you would know this is way off. All right. But it's close enough that it could be a student that doesn't understand or doesn't know could think that's the answer. So read the questions carefully. All right? Take it one at a time. A lot of kids get overwhelmed with the size of the test and the amount of time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay, one question at a time, one item at a time instead of worrying about the whole thing. Reread when necessary. There are no answer patterns, okay? So if they think, oh, it's doing this or that, there are no answer patterns. And let your kids know that ahead of time. Tell them that C isn't always the answer. You put C down, you're going to get 25%, okay? So let them know there's no answer patterns. Do your best. Don't worry that you got 3 in a row of C or 3 in a row of A. That's just a coincidence of that version of the test. Okay? And we're going to get the test. 3rd grade test will have 20 versions, I think, maybe 25 versions. They're all the same questions. They're just jumbled up in different orders. So it's okay. Okay, if you think that's the right answer, then go with that. Make educated guesses, decide exactly what the question is asking, and one response is clearly the best response. The other 3 may be good, but one is clearly the best response. Okay, and if you know what the question is asking, you can figure that out. Skip and come back to difficult questions. I always try to tell people, make sure when they skip a question that they also skip it in their answer document. All right? If they don't skip it in their answer document, you're going to have a big problem. on your hands. On their scratch paper, they can mark down, oh, I skipped this question. Skip question 23. All right, so they know they can come back to that or whatever. One of the things I used to have my biology kids do is go through the test one time. High school's different because it's not time. Okay? Go through the test one time and mark all the questions you absolutely knew. Then go back the second time, and when you go back the second time, going through the test once may have jarred your memory of some questions you didn't know, all right? And you can eliminate more answers. And then go back through it a third time just to kind of refresh and review the thing. But it's okay to go through the test many times if you have time. High school, that works well. I know the elementary school and middle school, it's a time test, so that's a little bit different, okay? Make sure to record the answer in the correct place on the answer document. It's a little thing, but having your students, if you've never given them a test where they got to keep up with here and here, and then all of a sudden on the TCAP they got to keep up with here and here, it gets very confusing, okay? Very confusing. The students do not have the option, the gen ed students don't have the option of marking down in their answer book and then somebody going in and making all the bubbles for them, okay? So they need to be keeping up with, here's the question, here's the answer, here's where it goes, all right? Stick with your answer unless you're not sure to. I mean, you're sure you're not to stick with it. I didn't word that real well, but basically, typically the students, and you hear this a lot, your first response probably is the best choice, okay? It is more often the correct response. Not always, but more often. So if you make the choice, don't go and change it just because you think, oh, I've got too many C's or I've got too many of these, okay? Unless you know it's obviously wrong. Then you go ahead and change it. If you don't know it's obviously wrong, there's no need to change your answer. Unless you know, all right? That's all I'm saying. Think about your pace and accuracy. So how fast you're going through the test and then how accurately you're going through the test, that varies from kid to kid. This is why the state's moving away from read aloud tests. And with the park, it's going to be a little different. Kids will have headphones, but with the read aloud test or class, you might have 10 kids in there. And the teacher's up reading the test. Okay, and as they read the test, the kids are answering. Well, your brains are going at a different pace than mine. Some kids are going faster, some kids are going slower, some are asleep now. Okay, and like you, they're asleep. Sorry, it's the end of the day. I know. Hey, and he was there later than me. We had a board meeting. I left at 10:30 last night.
Mr. Stookey,
Yeah.
high school EOCs, there's no time.
There's no time on the
And
ESC.
one of the questions I get from the kids all the time on the practice, how long should it take me? And I know it varies by kid. Is there any kind of correlation you give them, if it takes you normal time for,
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. How long should it take you? It depends on the test, the chemistry. I've not been part of the chemistry, so I'm not sure about the math and all that. Typically, tests that have math take 1.5 to 2 times as long.
I mean, you hesitate to tell them anything because then they feel like they're failing if they don't get it at a certain time. But
Yeah.
you also want to encourage them to.
Well, here's how most of the high schools operate on the test. Is we've blocked off 2 hours for you to take it. If you finish in 30 minutes, you may have moved too fast, all right? So you've got the time, so just pace yourself through there. It's hard to say. I mean, I was the type of kid in school that I would do great on the first half of a test. But the second half of the test, I did very poorly on. Because what would happen is, I would see people start to finish, and then I would get all amped up and embarrassed that I wasn't finished yet, so I would just hustle through the rest of it, okay? So, when I gave tests in high school, they were all untimed. You've got 90 minutes, I say untimed, you have 90 minutes to complete this test. If you can finish it in 45 minutes, great, get out a book and read it. They can't do that though. Or, you know, if you need the whole hour and a half, that's fine. That is no big deal. And here's the lie that I allowed myself to believe, that the people that were finishing faster were doing better. They weren't. Some were, but most weren't. They were just trying to get done with it. So that goes back to, Brian, I think it all goes back to this, where we instill in people, do your best all the time, no matter who's looking. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to judge myself by what you think of me, or what this group thinks of me, or even what I think of me. Okay, there's something other out there, all right? But it's not human, all right? So take your time as you go through and do your best in what you're doing, okay? If you can live with that, where's Jennifer? I'm looking for somebody I could call their name wrong. You know, if Jennifer takes the test in 30 minutes and she's feels like, man, I gave my best shot on that and I'm living with that, there you go. That's all right. Yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
Why is the think link not timed? If we're preparing for the end of the year time assessment, then why aren't those formal assessments timed?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm not sure how long it takes the kids to go through the elementary kids to go through the thing. There's only a few questions on it. When I say a few questions, the high school think links is what, 30 questions on that thing? Unless they change it. So, you know, you could say, and your school could decide, hey, we're going to give this, and you can develop your own probes for it. So you can say, okay, here are my ThinkLink probes that go with these SPIs that I want to cover. Students, you have 15 minutes to do these 6 probes or 10 probes, whatever you feel is appropriate for that, you can do that. I wouldn't say when we do the benchmark that you're going to arbitrarily, okay, my class is going to get time when nobody else's is, because that gives us kind of some jumbled up data at that point. But you're more than welcome to create probes and do that. I'll look into overall system kind of time benchmark. My understanding for next year's EOY is time limits are going to vary a bit. So, and we're not really sure how all that's going to look at this point. Thanks for asking that. Use any remaining time to check your answers. Clean your answer documents. Talk to your students about, and give them copy off some practice bubbling things, and talk with them about bubbling. And, okay, we all remember, we're not talking about the good, the bad, and what happened are the results of the election of 2000. But we all know the craziness at the end of that thing, okay? Where people are having to make a judgment call. Is this a punch or is it not a punch? Nobody heard of Chad. We knew the country Chad and we knew a people Chad, but you didn't know that little piece of thing that came out of the ballot was a Chad. Is it a punch Chad? Is it a hanging Chad? Let me just tell you, nobody's making that determination. Nobody is scrutinizing these tests to that extent. Either the mark is there and it's readable, or it is not there. Okay? So as the students make their marks on the test, work with them. Give them some practice sheets where they answer some questions and do some bubbling, and then look at how they're bubbling. Okay? And if you notice a kid's not filling in a complete circle and making it nice and dark, work with them on that. That's a skill. It's a test-taking skill. Okay? We don't want them to be graded poorly because they didn't perform the skill of testing. All right? I get a lot of, I'm not going to be able to write up here and you're not going to see it. I get a lot of just little, here's the circle, and there's like a dash through the circle like that. Okay? That's not going to be graded right. Okay? If they've got, if there's big erasure marks where there's like graphite smeared across several answers, I just tell you, that's not getting graded right. Okay? So, clean answer documents. All right? I'm a messy person. Mr. Chandler knows this, he's been in my office. You know, I don't mind piles, all right? Some kids may not mind marks and things all over their papers. The scanner minds, okay? The scanner minds that kind of thing. So clean up our answer documents. If you don't have little white erasers, and I'm not even sure what they're called. They're little plastic erasers, little white erasers. I would get some of those. Talk to the people at your school, your testing coordinator, your administrators, or whatever. Hey, do we have any of these white erasers? Those white erasers, they're gummy, and man, they take off that graphite like nobody's business. Okay, and let the kids use those. There are some schools that will go to a golf course and they get a bunch of golf course pencils. There's no eraser on those things, right? And then they dull up because the point's really sharp on them, all right? So the kids practice doing different tests with these little golf course pencils. The school will either buy a bunch of them or the golf course donates them. And so they practice and they sharpen, they've been sharpened and dulled out. So, because the sharp ones will run right through the answer document. Then we got another mess because we got to create new answer docs, all right? So, but they'll practice with these things. Since there's no eraser on them, they're also armed with one of those white erasers so they can erase with that. All right, so that's just it's just a little mechanical strategy that some places use. But the clean answer documents are important. It's also important that the answer documents aren't all bent up. We send off 6,000 TCAP tests to get scanned. 6,000 TCAP tests to get scanned. We're just one system. And all the systems in the state are sending their stuff off to Pearson to get scanned. So many other states, they're sending their stuff off to Pearson to get scanned. All right? In Iowa, they don't have time to fix all kinds of errors in the answer documents where they're bent up or whatnot. I did the scanning my very first semester in the job. Go back. My very first semester in the job, I had to do the scanning at a center for our EOCs, and I was there for 4 hours just with half of the system's high school students that tested. That was a long time. That scanning machine stopped a bunch. All right, I'm going to move along. Math. I don't like that first thing. I've got a bias against calculators. All right, and they're not going to be using them much in the future. All right, on tests, but the students, if a student is used to using the calculator and they can use it well, allow them to use it. You don't need a calculator to answer any TCAP math question, though. A student can figure everything out by hand. Some of them might require more skill, but a calculator is not required to do any of it. Check your answers. For math, I'm a big estimator. I think it's important for people to know how to estimate. And so in my classroom, I try to get kids to estimate things all the time. Like, how many Brian Chandlers tall is this room? All right? And so, Brian, how many of you tall is this room? Well, I'm 5. Really? You think you can stand, 5 of you can stand up on there and then challenge them on it, and then so they can really fine-tune their estimating. You can estimate on math problems, and then as you look at the answer choices, some of those answer choices are automatically going to fade away, some are going to come to the forefront, and you can increase your speed on those math problems and your accuracy with good estimation skills. Make sure with the word problems you're reading stuff, and restate the answer or the question you're being asked. Circle little things like circling the numbers. Man, I got one elementary school on it. You may be from it, or you may find out you're from it. They're all about highlighters. One of my concerns with highlighters, the TCAP tests that come in, the answer books are fine, or the answer documents are fine, but the answer books from this particular school, I think the kids spend more time highlighting and coloring the stinking test book than they do taking care for answering the questions. Because, they are all decorated up. All decorated up and colored up. But one of the test-taking skills that this particular school uses is highlighting key words. All right? So the covers of these things are highlighted and everything. Anyway, This year I'm gonna do an analysis on that school and their scores. All right, so, circle, it's okay to circle. Draw little pictures that help you, all right? If you're just doodling just a doodle, that's a distraction. ELA, skim questions and passages before you start to, skim questions before you start to read the passages, that kind of, you know, that's just a reading strategy that you all know, all right? Academic vocabulary, hopefully you've been covering academic vocabulary with your kids. Because I will tell you, as I've gone to these bias meetings, that's one of the things we look at, is we look at words. Oh, that's one of the vocabularies. That's part of the academic vocabulary for 4th grade. And so it's important that your students know the academic vocabulary for the grade. If I'm in 6th grade, there may be some 4th grade academic vocabulary on the test. And I'll just tell you, some of these kids, when at one of the bias meetings, I wish I could remember the word, but I remember thinking at the time, they don't have to know that. Surely they don't know that word. I learned that word 2 years ago. And they said, no, that's part of the academic vocabulary for 4th grade. So know what the vocabulary terms are, because they will show up in the test, either STEM or question, or STEM or distractors. Watch for grammatical inconsistencies. This is for your you need to work with this with most of your kids, okay? But watch the distractor, I shouldn't say distractor, the correct answer is going to grammatically match the STEM, all right? So it should match the STEM in terms of grammar and mechanics. So pay attention to those kinds of things. When the STEM is the form of an incomplete sentence, each option should complete the sentence in some grammatical way. And I'm just telling you, they look for that. That's one of the things we look for as we develop test items and do the bias. Is, okay, this fits that, it doesn't fit that. All right, so look at things like that. And you can kind of, as you make your own test, you can make your own test with some of those things in mind, and then coach your kids up. All right, coach them up. My kid, if they climb up on top of the house, all right, and start cutting branches up on top of the house, they may know not to cut the big black wire that's going through the branches. They may know not to do that. But unless they know the results of what happened, they're not going to think about that it's going to dramatically affect the rest of their life, however long or short that may be. You with me? Okay? So coach your kids up on some of these things and those strategies. Read things carefully. It's late and it's getting warmer, so I'm moving through. Okay. Is this the best and most complete answer to that question? Think through things like that. All right. Identify keywords, where they are. Carefully read the stems and look for important clues. Carefully read the stem. All right. Eliminate clearly incorrect answers. You know, it's okay to mark in that test booklet, so mark through incorrect answers. Mark through. A strategy that you might use during the school year, and Crystal could probably attest to this. I would have them do a test and then explain why the wrong answers are wrong. Okay? Why is the wrong answer wrong here? Not the answer that you put that was wrong. Why are all the wrong answers wrong? Okay? And that gives them a better understanding of what the correct answer was. Okay? So think about things like that. Eliminate incorrect answers. And that also increases the probability. If I eliminate 2 questions, now I got a 50-50 shot if I'm going to do a guess. All right? And if you can identify, like on those math with estimation, you can identify some right off the bat that are wrong that allows you more time to focus on the other things. All right. This is stuff that will directly concern you as a test administrator. Read the instruction booklet. Okay. Read the teacher direction booklet. All right. you need to do that ahead of time. Don't show up to administer the test and not have read it. Number one, you just lied. Okay, if you do that, just tell you. If you show up to the test and you've not read the directions beforehand, you have lied because you've already signed something that says that you've read you've been trained and you've read the directions. Okay, so make sure that you read the thing ahead of time. You're going to not embellish the directions. You read what's there. It's a standardized test. Everybody in the state reads the same thing. You can ask students, do you have any questions? Do you have any questions? This is the procedural thing of what we're doing. Okay. All right. This is start out really all my test trainings with this statement. Any person found to have not followed security guidelines for administering the TCAT test or successor test, including making or distributing unauthorized copies of the test, altering a grade or answer sheet, providing copies of answers or test questions, or otherwise compromising the integrity of the testing process shall be placed on immediate suspension, and such actions will be ground for dismissal, including dismissal of tenured employees. Such actions shall be grounds for revocation of state license. Scott Stookey does not make that determination. Scott Stookey is not taking anybody's license away. Okay? Only the State Board of Education can do that. Only they can do that, right? They're the ones that make the determination. Yes, this is a breach of security, and this is the action that's going to happen here, all right? But teachers across the state lose their licenses every year. There are teachers in the state of Tennessee this year that will lose their license because they did not respect the process, okay? And they did not implement the test with integrity. And as a result of that, they will lose their license. Please do not be part of that. You may think, and here's typically what happens, they think they're doing their students a favor, okay? They're helping that student out, but if this student gets help in a way that's not appropriate for the test, that is unfair to the thousands of other students that did not get that, okay? That's the point of it, okay? So that it's fair, it's an equal playing field for everybody. Everybody's got the equal shot of success, and nobody has that unfair advantage because somebody, and it's the kids that'll rat you out. You know why? You saw that she got some help, and you go home. How was the test? Well, like, see, Luke Stookey did this fine. I failed that CRP test. But you know what? So-and-so, I didn't know this, and I didn't get any help, but the teacher told this person what was going on. And they, how dare they not help my son? I'm on the phone, and I want some butts now. Dumb video, and I'm sorry. And, you know, I'm after somebody.
He's going to edit that part out too.
You know, I'm after somebody because my kid was disadvantaged. You know, somebody got something that my kid didn't get. And that's how people find out. All right? And if you don't think it doesn't happen, you're fooling yourself. The students will rat you out faster than anybody. You know what? Often teachers will. Because, hey, this is why we don't test our own students unless we have a proctor. All right, the proctor is there for your safety. If you're testing your own students, it's to help remove any doubt, so that you can be above reproach. Okay, that's what we're looking for. You're going to act with integrity, and we're going to trust you to do that. And here's a safeguard of support for you. All right. So please keep those things in mind. All right, so this is where the thing started getting, and you're thinking, thank you that this stuff didn't all make it onto the PowerPoint. Listen to your testing coordinator. All right? Listen to your testing coordinator. You should know who the testing coordinator is at your school. You're going to have people that have taught in the system or other systems. They may be, you may be one of them. You may have taught in another system, you said, oh, you don't have to do that, this is how we did it over here. You will do it the way the Jackson-Madison County school system instructs you to administer this test, because we're administering the test with the integrity of how the state has told us we should administer this test, okay? A teacher may be down the hall from you, and they've given it so many, oh, you don't really have to do all that. You know, it's all right to flip through that page, those pages and read that test. Do not do that. Listen to your test coordinator. They are the testing guru at your school. If they need to ask a question, they'll default to me, and I'll answer the question. If I don't know the answer, then I'm not afraid. I gave up, you know, the embarrassment of not knowing the answer several years ago. If I need to call somebody, I'll call somebody or email, and then I'll get an answer back on whatever it is. And Jennifer and Kim know, hey, they'll ask me something, it's like, you know what, I might have to call Eddie on that, or I might have to call Deb Malone on that one. So there's no shame in asking. It's better to be safe than sorry. I will tell you this, where testing is concerned, it is better to get permission first. Don't go with the adage, I'll get forgiveness. Okay? It's easier to get forgiveness than permission. That does not hold with this testing stuff. Okay? Number one, you just made a conscious effort to circumvent the rules. Okay? So please do not do that. Get permission first. All right. These are practical tips for you. As a test administrator, sleep, use the restroom, and eat breakfast before all the tests. Okay? Lay off water during the test. Don't drink a bunch of water during the test, especially if you're not used to drinking a bunch of water. I worked with a guy that drank 2 gallons of water every day at work. He was used to drinking 2 gallons of water every day at work. All right? His body became accustomed to that. If all of a sudden he didn't do that, and he came in to give a test and he decided he was going to drink 2 gallons of water, he'd have to leave the test because of having to urinate. All right, so make sure that you do not drink crazy amounts of water during the test. Pay attention to the clock. Don't show stress. All right, respect the process, but you don't have to be stressed out about it. Some people ask me, because I'm more of a laid-back person. I've always kind of been that way. Doesn't this bother you?